somehow
Concord.
return.
What's up guys? So for this video I'm going to be reacting to Actman TV's video called I Can't Believe They Killed Highguard. If you didn't know, a couple days ago Highguard officially shut down its servers just 45 days after launch, meaning you can no longer play the game. So if you were a fan of Highguard for some reason, well, you're very upset because you can no longer play Highguard. Plus, this was the final game announcement at the Game Awards last year, so Highguard being shut down 45 days after launch is pretty wild. On the other hand, if you're happy that Highguard shut down and you wanted it to get shut down from the jump, well, you got your wish.
What's up everybody, this is the Actman here, and today I promised I wouldn't make another Highguard video. Reason being, you know, they had a year-long roadmap. I thought this game's gonna at least get some consistent service and updates, and maybe more people will trickle in, the game will get better. And, you know, I'll probably make a video about this game at the end of its live service, or at least at the end of that year-long roadmap they had. Well, folks, it is the end. It is the end. Highguard is permanently shutting down on March 12th. So, for those of you keeping track, Highguard lasted about 45 days, so a month and a half, versus Concord, which was a week and a half.
Well, at least Highguard lasted a few weeks longer than Concord. However, just like Concord, Highguard suffered the same fate, and that is being permanently shut down. Because Jeff Keighley was shilling for Highguard and saying, oh my god, this is a great game, I played it and you're going to want to play Highguard, it lasted a lot longer than it would have if Jeff Keighley didn't shill for Highguard.
Why does this keep happening? It boggles the mind how so much time, money, and effort can be put into these products, and then they just die. Just completely die, pull the plug. I feel like I need to make a separate video, why do games keep flopping, on the main channel, to help try to explain this. That's more broad. Today we're honing in on Highguard, why it failed, how shocking this is, and what we can all learn from this. Because it just appears like nobody learned anything from Highguard. Concord. I'm mixing them up already. Nobody learned anything from Concord. And so maybe making this video, we can kind of hammer in the lessons so that this doesn't happen in the future and people don't waste their time on, you know, making something that just is going to be shut down in a month and a half. Ironically enough, on January 5th, someone posted a fake end of service letter on the Highguard subreddit 3 weeks before the game released. It estimated the shutdown date in June. Game didn't even make it as far as people joking about its demise would. Also, if you pause the video and read this, like, this sounds like a real post. It doesn't look AI generated, the text is all good. But yes, this is their official statement here. Today we're sharing difficult news. We have made the decision to permanently shut down Highguard on March 12th. Since launch, more than 2 million players stepped into Highguard's world. You shared feedback, created content, and many believed in what we were building. For that, we are deeply grateful. Just as a side note, okay? When talking about multiplayer games, there's not a whole lot of expectations of storytelling or world building. And this was a huge point why I think Arc Raiders is so compelling, is because the world is very interesting, the environments tell a story, as do your adventures through it. Where do the Raiders hold up? In a place called Speranza. Locations have names, but for Highguard, even the developers don't have a name for it. What was the world that Highguard took place in? Was it just Highguard? Is that what it was? You know, part of the reason this game failed is because you number one, came up with a monetization system, free to play, and you're selling skins for characters. You have to sell people on those characters. People have to feel like their identity is represented in this character, in this play style. Otherwise, why would you play them? I mean, you look at Overwatch for comparison. Reason why people loved Overwatch? A lot of it had to do with the trailers, with the excellent Blizzard cutscenes and cinematics that sold us on a universe, and this cast of characters and heroes and villains, and how they interacted with each other. There was personality and charm. When you don't even have a name for your world, like you haven't even thought about it that much.
Plus, there was no unique factor for Highguard. You look at a game like Marvel Rivals, people play it not just because it's fun, but because you can play as all of the Marvel characters, from the comic books, from the movies, and that's what makes Marvel Rivals stand out compared to the rest of its competition in the hero shooter genre. Highguard doesn't have any of that. Not to mention, Highguard didn't have a unique art style like Marvel Rivals. It didn't have a comic, cartoony art style. It was just bland. Highguard was just boring, soulless. It didn't have anything unique to offer compared to the rest of the games in the hero shooter genre. Not only did people not want to try out Highguard because of the staggering lack of content, but people who played it for the first time aren't gonna play Highguard again after trying it for the first time because it just doesn't have a reason for you to continue playing. It was just uninteresting and boring.
It's just, how do you expect people to buy into this? That was problem number one, why the game failed. Problem number two is, it's a brand new IP, free to play. You're buying skins, and then the game is shown off at the Game Awards, and it just completely disappears into the void. Where did Highguard go? I was interested in this. They had a generic trailer that didn't really explain anything about the game or what it is. It's brand new. So just your average gamer obviously was going to be confused by this bizarre marketing tactic. There was nothing compelling, no reason why we're like storming bases with the shield breaker and calling in these giant rams. There was nothing. Also, more than 2 million players. So people might give Jeff Keighley shit for promoting this game. And yeah, he may have some financial ties to Tencent. So it is a little shady if I'm going to be completely honest. However, had Jeff not promoted the game, this game would have died just as fast as Concord.
I will agree with the Actman in terms of Jeff Keighley promoting Highguard and giving it a much longer lifespan than Highguard deserved. But on the other hand, if Jeff Keighley didn't do that, then Highguard, it would have died just as quickly as Concord, or even earlier. But it would have received much less hate because it didn't take up the final spot at the Game Awards over games like Resident Evil Requiem, Divinity Original Sin, the new one that is coming out, and the Star Wars Fate of the Republic. If Jeff Keighley didn't promote the game, it would have gotten much less hate, but it definitely would have died just as quickly, if not even quicker than Concord. But because Jeff Keighley promoted the fuck out of Highguard and put it at the final spot of the Game Awards, plus he did it for free, Highguard got a lot more hate than Jeff, Tencent, and Wildlight Entertainment expected. After people saw the trailer at the Game Awards, Highguard was just labelled as Concord 2 or Concord 2.0. So it definitely got a lot of hate when it was first shown off at the Game Awards, and Highguard was destined to fail because of that, and because of the lack of content the game had, plus it had no reason to keep players interested. Highguard would have died either way.
That's the only difference. 2 million players stepped into the game, and yet 2 million players, nearly 2 million players, stepped out. They didn't find it compelling. So Jeff does not really deserve any blame for the game's failure. If anything, he made it last an extra 2 to 3 weeks. Because the ratio of 99.9% player drop-off, it doesn't matter if how many players you have. That ratio would have been the same, whether it was 10 million, 100,000, or 100 million. Despite the passion and hard work of our team, we have not been able to build a sustainable player base to support the game long term. Servers will remain online until March 12th. We hope you'll jump in with us one more time to show your support and get those final great matches in while we still can. The team is excited to release one final game update to enjoy in the remaining life of the game. We'll be adding a new warden, a new weapon, account level progression, and skill trees. Full patch notes are coming, and we're targeting tonight or tomorrow morning for patch releases. So maybe later on, we'll hop in real quick just to see what the menus look like. From all of us at Wildlife, thank you for playing, for supporting us, and for being part of Highguard's story. Where to start, man? What was Highguard's story?
A game given the largest stage in the industry and failing within 2 months to build a sustainable player base.
I guess at least the game was free, right? And they didn't have to issue mass refunds to everyone like they did with Concord. But what if you were one of those people who believed in the game and you paid for the skin and now you're just like, now you're fucked?
Well, thank goodness Highguard didn't have physical copies of the game, because if it did and people actually bought physical copies of Highguard, then their discs would just remain inaccessible, which would just be a waste of money. On the other hand, people who bought skins for all of the characters in Highguard definitely feel very upset because the skins that they purchased for all of the characters, or their favourite character in Highguard, is wasted because the game shut down. So people who purchase skins for their favourite character or characters in Highguard, they're not going to be able to access the game anymore for the characters they purchase skins for. People who purchase skins would just feel very upset and their money has been wasted. If there is anybody out there that purchased character skins in Highguard, oof, they definitely made a bad purchase.
Granted, I don't think many people bought Highguard tokens or Highguard coins, whatever it was. But here's where I get so confused, because it seemed like the plan was to shadow drop the game and then slowly build it up over time, right? Like they did with Apex Legends. Except Tencent pulled the funding and they weren't making enough money. So like the game plan from the start, this shadow drop was bad off the rip. And this is another reason number 3 why the game failed. It just wasn't complete at launch. Okay, you're adding a new warden, a new weapon, account level progression. Account level progression, that's industry standard, man. Those of you that watched the COD 4 review on my main channel, like that was a big revolution, and now, ever since then, just people expect in first-person shooters to level up. And skill trees? Why weren't there skill trees at launch? You see, I don't know if these things would have made a huge difference, but it would have been something. I think maybe with account level progression, just the idea of building up something, that's investment. That's how you show player investment. And when you don't have something like that in a live service experience, then people are going to go someplace else that rewards their time more. I think that it really is the main point. There was nothing to invest in with Highguard. You think about, oh, if you're a pro player, yeah, the game was competitive, but it's like, who are you streaming Highguard to? Are there going to be any tournaments? Nope, no funding for that. If you like, interesting new worlds, there was no story to be told here. If you were someone looking for a new live service to invest your time in and max out a character, level up or whatever, you couldn't do that. Releasing a progression system and skill trees, like when the game is already gonna die, it's
a sign of mismanagement. The game was mishandled right from the get-go. Even before the game was released, it was mishandled. It had no marketing. Basically, after the first trailer at the Game Awards, it had no deep dive. It didn't tell you any more details as to what Highguard is all about. The Wardens, what was that all about? Nobody knew. Basic features like a scoreboard and account progression system, things like that, were absent from the game's launch, so that's really bad. So people were just like, okay, well, Highguard doesn't have basic features that are expected to be in the game's launch, so they decided to play other games that rewarded their time and skill. Highguard doesn't really reward you with anything. The game didn't even have kills and deaths either. It had to be patched in at a later update, which is just really silly. It should have been there at launch, but for some reason it launched without a kill and death counter on your HUD.
What I find so bizarre, though, is that they didn't even entertain the thought that this game could be salvaged in some way or another. Tencent or whoever just gave up on it. Now, we got to check in with Jeff Keighley because I can't imagine he's taking this news all the best. Guys, I'm worried about him. Nothing even matters now. The Game Awards are canceled. We get it, you like the game. He's been playing for 17 hours. Good job, Spooky. The thing is, the type of content listed in this update is substantial. This is a solid amount of content for a live service update. You could argue that a lot of the stuff should have been there at launch, but this shows that they were at least prepared with something right out the gate. You know, they had a year-long roadmap planned out, and I think this just goes to show that roadmaps are always subject to change, but more than that, it doesn't take a huge budget to create a graphic that promises a lot of features and updates in the future. You can always figure that out later on, right? Jeff Keighley posted, Highguard will go offline on March 12th. And what I said, this must feel like losing a son for you. I'm sorry for your loss. Live service games have the lifespan of a disposable vape now. The future of gaming, huh? We will be accepting your apology, Jeff. Fantastic Concord 2 art there. Before the game came out, he said, in 48 hours, I'll be accepting your apologies. And I think we are the ones who deserve an apology. But not really.
I don't get how Jeff Keighley played Highguard and said, yep, this is worthy of being put at the final spot at the Game Awards. It really makes no sense whatsoever. Tencent giving up on Highguard's lifespan is definitely one of the many reasons why Highguard failed. Jeff was very, very upset that Highguard ended up permanently shutting down. Because he loved Highguard so much, he decided to put it at the final spot of the Game Awards for free.
Now here's the thing, to talk about the toxic gaming discourse once more, I don't agree with people celebrating this game's failure because I feel like overall it's bad for the industry when games fail. Does that mean it's off limits and we can't make fun of it? No, of course not. Of course, we can make fun of anything on here. But like, if we're looking at the big picture, in an industry where layoffs and studio shutdowns are so common and it just seems like the same mistakes are being made, where companies are putting hundreds of millions of dollars into these speculative projects, you know, it's like, and then they're failing and all these people who worked on it, who put their heart and soul into it, are laid off, fired, you know, the more that this happens in the industry, the less confident people are in terms of like future projects down the line. Did Highguard deserve to fail? No. Was it destined to fail? Yes. While there's always going to be toxic bad actors in the gaming community, I think the bottom line is that gamers decide what games flop and which ones don't. At least for the most part, that's the case. Sometimes publishers decide when a game fails. I recently saw, side note, Battlefield 6 was the best-selling game in the US in 2025, and DICE has been hit with layoffs.
That goes to show just how awful CEOs are, because they will dispose of you. Even if you do a good job at working on video games, it doesn't matter, you're still getting hit with a layoff. Which is sad, really, because these corporate arseholes only care about making money and they'll lay off people because they want to avoid paying people who work on video games that people enjoy. It's just an unfortunate reality.
So, in an ideal world, the consumer, the customer, would decide if a game is worthy of succeeding or not. Highguard was not a terrible game. It was just something that, it was a niche that is already being filled by multiple other games that people have already invested in. And so in order to stand out, you have to take things to the next level. You have to take things in a different direction. There was genuine promise with the whole base building. And to point this out, the idea of being able to choose what base you have in each map, both teams can do that. That's really cool. Imagine if you were playing on Blood Gulch in Halo 2 and you could decide what structure your base was and where the flag was. That's really cool. But they really didn't take things far enough. They played it too safe, and there's like no first-person shooters where the goal is to destroy someone's base. I love real-time strategies, and Renegade X is just like that. There's no games out there quite like it. So Highguard had it push that concept of base building, base destruction, you know, maybe taking some inspiration from Deadlock a little bit. Things could have been different. This could have been a game that people might have stuck with. You know, it's not like Highguard was part of some pre-established franchise that's beloved and it completely shit the bed, you know? So there's no reason in my mind to hate Highguard. And while it's easy to, you know, crack jokes about Concord too, I think at the end of the day, like, somebody has to learn a lesson from all this, you know? We got some insight from the studio head and game director of Highguard, who said, "We had slightly over 2 million players worldwide try the game. I would like to thank all of you for giving it a try. Given all of the backlash between announce and launch day, trying the game for yourself is all I could have asked for. Thanks to our players." That's a good statement. Average session duration was 91 minutes. This is actually quite good. Means that on average, a player logged into Highguard and played for 91 minutes. That lines up with what I did, because the first time I played it, yeah, I played it for maybe 2 hours. But you know what I didn't do was boot it up again. That's the unfortunate part, is that at the end of my play session, I was like, well, I had fun, but I didn't really feel like I accomplished anything or that I'm building to anything. PS5 was the biggest player base, then Xbox, and then Steam. So there's some interesting numbers and details of the game in here. Okay, here are some numbers for you. 8 days. One live service game shut down in 8 days. Players do speedruns, so do games. The Culling 2 sits with the world record at 8 days. Concord at 14, Highguard 45. Somehow, the day before is at 46. That lasted 46 days, which is just mind-blowing to me.
Oh my god. The day before, a video game that is an actual scam lasted longer than both Highguard and Concord. That is just insane to realize that.
Now, another important thing, the Highguard director confirmed that the game released without content because they ran out of time and money. When you're out of time and money, you have to release a game with the runway you have available and hope players will stick with you post-launch. So one has to wonder, where did all that money and time go? Because I feel like designing a scoreboard, for example, that really doesn't take a lot of time, or it shouldn't. The reason I keep talking about scoreboards in these games is because although it is such a minor feature, that's exactly it. It is such a minor feature that if something like that, just a basic industry standard quality of life feature, is not present in the game, I don't know about you, but that just pisses me off. I'm like, am I doing good or am I sucking ass? Like, I need to know how I'm playing. Otherwise, so I can make informed decisions about how to change my playstyle. Maybe it's the hero I'm playing. Maybe I don't understand the mechanics. Maybe it's the weapons I'm picking. Also, another thing to point out is that the landscape of each map was just completely empty and barren. You know, there's no PvE. Again, Arc Raiders has PvP and PvE. This game only had PvP. So you really just ran around an empty map with nothing going on, just whacking stones with an axe and opening chests and stuff. You know, it's hardly exhilarating stuff, but it was a type of resource gathering that you see in real-time strategy games. So again, one has to wonder, why didn't you take that RTS style and go with it? So I have to believe that if they ran out of time and money, then that time and money was focused on the wrong things. Clearly. I think, conceptually, had there been creeps, monsters to fight and level up, like, you have to give players reasons to explore the map and make decisions. Does somebody stay behind at the base and fortify it? If that's their playstyle, they should. Do they want to go out and just fight other creeps and mine resources and power scale? Sure. Do they want to immediately fight other players? Yeah. The game has to encourage all these different playstyles, and it didn't really do that. Highguard devs say they're confident in the game, but that they didn't expect the hate. Lead game designer said the belief came from the fact they had, quote, a game that you couldn't find anywhere else, so we felt very confident in that. I don't know how you come to this conclusion, especially when Highguard is a synonym for Overwatch.
Another thing to mention is that Wildlight Entertainment had to bring out a new patch reducing the spawn time of enemies that have died from 20 seconds to 15 seconds, plus the prep time was reduced from 120 seconds to 90 seconds. Overall, just a shit show for Highguard, and it really goes to show how mishandled this game was. Plus, there was no action before you try to overtake an enemy's base, so you're just hoping to run into an enemy and hope you can get joy out of killing them because you've been running around in this empty, barren world of Highguard. I guess the reason why Wildlight Entertainment had a bunch of skins you can buy for all of the characters in Highguard is because Tencent was hoping they could make a bunch of money out of people buying skins for all of the characters in Highguard when people weren't really doing that. Maybe there might have been some people that did that, but not as much as Tencent was hoping, so they decided to give up on the game and stop funding it.
I don't think there would have been much hate for Highguard if it wasn't shown at the end of the Game Awards, if it wasn't built up as this, next-gen revolutionary experience that's going to change the landscape of gaming for the next 1,000 years. But it was built up. It was put in a position that it wasn't designed for or designed to be marketed in. So people's expectations for the final reveal of the Game Awards were, it was a sour note to end what was otherwise a very awesome presentation and award ceremony. But I don't know where this confidence comes from that there was no other game like Highguard. Like I said, the only things that were special about it was like the base building, maybe the horses and the mounted and infantry combat, maybe, but not only could you find a game like Highguard, you could find better Highguards out there. Just because your game is free to play doesn't mean a player base is going to stick around. Arc Raiders might be $40, but I think it shows that people are willing to pay money for a complete product. Once the industry kind of went away from, making a product that people want to pay for, I think it really lowered the overall standard of quality and standard of content. Like the minimum viable product has gotten to a point where it's considered to be so low that something like Highguard could release and that they could somehow be confident in it. It's not going to cut it in this industry because you're in the hero shooter genre, the shooter genre, and you gotta tell people what the fuck your game is about and what makes it different or special, I feel like when Bungie did those old Vidocs for Halo 2 and Halo 3, and that was the first time I really felt like I got the perspective of the people who designed this game that I love. And you gotta sell people on that vision. Don't just play some random generic trailer that, for people's first impressions, and they don't know what the fuck this game is, this world, or who these characters are. Sell us on your vision, and don't do it in a corporate way where it's like, oh, and this game is just so great, everything about it is perfect. Tell me about the struggles involved in making it. What worked, what didn't work? Why do you feel so confident? Explain yourself. Another problem was that they kind of gave off this, we're an independent studio vibe, producing a AAA game, and yet they were secretly backed by Tencent, and now Tencent has pulled the funding. So it's almost like an out-of-touch CEO or corporate dude was like, indie and AA games are doing a lot better than AAA. Well, what if we take our AAA game and pretend like it's being made by an indie studio? That'll work, right? Nope, didn't.
I don't get why a game publisher or a game studio would think it's a good idea to pretend they're an indie studio, but they're backed by a well-known publisher, in this case, Tencent. Why would Wildlight Entertainment think it's a good idea to lie about being a indie studio when they're actually backed by Tencent? I don't know why Wildlight Entertainment thought it'd be a great idea to not market what Highguard is all about after the Game Awards and do a deep dive in terms of telling viewers who are obviously calling it Concord 2.0 what Highguard is all about, what the heroes are all about, what the game has to offer. Before release, it was just radio silence right after the Game Awards. Suddenly, when the game launched, there was a 20-plus minute deep dive trailer about Highguard, plus there was a bunch of marketing videos about Highguard, which is just so silly. Why didn't they do this before? All of the ideas and confidence in Highguard was just so misplaced. Plus, the heroes looked very bland. It wasn't ugly like Concord, but it was just very plain, boring. That's what made people not care about Highguard's heroes. You look at Overwatch and Marvel Rivals, people are way more attached to those characters because they actually stand out and they look much better than Highguard's characters. The game was destined to fail because of all these terrible decisions.
So what can be learned from Highguard's failure? Well, to be honest, I'm still surprised that they didn't bother to stick with it. This article from PC Gamer. Rip Highguard. In a better world, an FPS is allowed to be unpopular. Highguard was not a dead game, it's being murdered. It didn't just die, it was murdered. Oh god, they're bringing that back. Murdered by who? I think it was destined to fail. It wasn't murdered, it wasn't the negativity of gamers that caused people to not be interested in this. 100,000 people played this day one, and by day two, it was 39,000. Day 3, 19,000. Within a week, the game had dropped below 5 digits. So it wasn't murdered. People made fun of it because it was shown off at the last spot in the Game Awards, but it didn't die because of that. It died because it wasn't a game that was compelling. It didn't have a good sales pitch. There wasn't any reason for players to invest in it based on what else is out there right now. It's a very competitive market, and this was not a game you couldn't find anywhere else. It was a game that had been made 2 years ago and failed. Now we're gonna quickly hop one last time into Highguard. We're gonna pay our respects. Time to pay my respects. A ranked mode is now available. Forge your legacy for the next maybe one day. This video is probably gonna come out the day before. I didn't even plan that one. Raid mode. You gotta play raid mode to unlock ranked. I mean, yeah, let me know in the comments if you played a ranked game of Highguard. I can't imagine there's enough players for that. Stats. They added this. They added stats. Look, you can see my Highguard stats. Incredible. I won 5 games. It doesn't tell me how many games I lost, though. Again, tell me if I suck or not. Yeah, see, KDA ratio. Show me my deaths, too, or how many assists I had. So even this is, like, not the best stat system. Should I buy the war chest? What about Highguard gold? Warden credits. Can I check the... Oh, this is the new hero. You can see there's a slot for another one. I mean, not a terrible design. Deploy a shield, protect any friendly orbs around you from destruction. Yeah, I mean, it does kind of suck that, like, all this is going to waste, you know? I mean, the quality of this art it's not bad. They had some talented artists for sure. You could have sold some of these mounts too, you know what I mean? Like giant owl bear thing. To answer your question, no, I am not going to play a match of Highguard. Regrettably. But I wanted to at least see for myself what they had added, and a stat screen, progression, account level, a new hero, new weapon. Well, it is what it is. So what did we learn today? What did we learn? I think it's safe to say Highguard failed and flopped for a variety of reasons. But it really just comes down to releasing a product that doesn't resonate with gamers, with customers. It doesn't inspire any vote of confidence, especially when you are revealed at the Game Awards and then you go radio silent. You don't even take that opportunity. You still stick with the, like, shadow drop angle. Number one, like, figure out how you're gonna market this, especially if it's a brand new IP. Like, how are you gonna sell this to people? How are you gonna get them invested? Number two, live service free-to-play hero shooter. Maybe just avoid that genre altogether, I think. And number three, timing. You gotta put your best foot forward first, especially if it's a new IP and you're revealing this on the world's biggest stage in gaming, right? Put your best foot forward, sell people on this game, tell them what it's about, inspire confidence. While it seems the developers were confident in the product, after showing it, gamers were not. Maybe don't try to trick people into thinking you're an independent studio when you're secretly taking money from a massive publisher. Overall, people's expectations were just all over the place, and nobody thought this game would succeed because it didn't give us any reason to think it would. Ultimately, the customers are the voice of what fails and what doesn't, and what succeeds. RIP to Highguard, we knew ye well. I'll see you in a year and a half, 2 years for Concord 3, and we'll see if this industry is able to learn anything from these repeated mistakes. What do you think? Did you play the ranked mode in Highguard? What level did you get to? Probably 0. Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to Actman TV for more awesome content. Alright everyone, that's all I got for today. This is the Godman signing out. Peace!
Alright, that's the end of Actman TV's video. Great video, and I do want to talk about my thoughts on Highguard shutting down, and my thoughts are, it was bound to happen, it was just a matter of when. I'm surprised it died in March. I thought it would have died in April, May, or June at the latest, but it died at March very early, a lot earlier than myself and many others expect, but with how badly Highguard has been handled, yeah, it was gonna die in March. Alongside Tencent no longer funding Wildlight Entertainment so they can bring all of the content on the roadmap into the game at release if the devs at Wildlight Entertainment had the funding from Tencent instead of Tencent changing their mind and no longer thinking Highguard was profitable. Plus, a lot of developers over at Wildlight Entertainment got laid off, so there was very little staff working on the game, alongside a post from a developer saying gamers are the reason Highguard failed, when in reality nobody liked the game, so it's not the gamer's fault, it's the people who made it are to blame for the failure of Highguard. The game impressed nobody, so it was destined to fail because it underperformed. Highguard will be one of those games that is forever lost media, meaning you can no longer play games that are lost media. Games like Minecraft Story Mode, that is lost media. X-Defiant, that is lost media. Concord is lost media. Same with The Day Before, Multiverses, etc. It's actually an embarrassment that Highguard shut down just under 2 months because it was shown at the last spot for the Game Awards for free because Jeff Keighley really loved the game that much. I remember seeing Highguard on the final spot at the Game Awards for the first time, and I thought to myself, yeah, I'm not playing this fucking game whatsoever because the art style is generic, the gameplay looked rather unimpressive, plus there was nothing to do on the Highguard map. Like, all of the Highguard maps have just PvP only, but there's literally nothing to do before you get to the enemy's base and try to overtake it. So it just leads to a large snooze fest before you see an enemy and you're like, oh, finally, some action, and you try and kill a bunch of enemies that are in front of you. Plus, that's what would be happening at Highguard tournaments, is just people hoping that players will be seeing each other and trying to kill one another because the map is just empty and there's nothing going on. You know, I thought to myself after the Highguard trailer, I'm not downloading the game because I'm gonna get bored of it very quickly. Plus, the game just looked uninteresting. Like, I wouldn't pay for Highguard if you had to pay just to play it, and I wouldn't even bother downloading Highguard for free because it was just boring. If you're one of those players that played Highguard, well, at least you can say you played Highguard before it officially died. It is nice that Highguard got the last bit of new content before its permanent shutdown, which is a stat system which should have been there on release, a few new weapons, a new character to play around as, a ranked mode. However, you had to complete 10 raid matches to play ranked, meaning you can't play ranked straight away, even if you just want to play ranked straight away, which is a really dumb requirement. All of this was released 1 week before it shut down. Maybe it might have been a couple of days before it shut down, so it kind of didn't matter that this piece of new content was released or not because the game was going to shut down in a couple of days. Am I happy Highguard died? Yes, because the game, you know, it didn't look impressive, plus the developers of Highguard were coping, being like, oh, you know, we don't care about the amount of players that play Highguard on a daily basis, we're still gonna keep the game around. Plus, the developer was coping, basically saying gamers are the reason Highguard failed, and they were forced to deal with the reality that they have to shut down Highguard because Tencent pulled the funding from the game. Obviously, it sucks that the developers at Highguard got laid off, and that only accelerated the demise of Highguard because they need the developers to work on a new hero, work on potential new modes after Ranked was introduced, PvE content, more skins, etc. You know, it's a good thing that Highguard died because Jeff Keighley was like, oh, you know, this game is going to be so great, it's going to be so awesome. Same with the Wildlight Entertainment developers and lead designers. They were like, yeah, this game is going to be a banger, only for it to shut down and make Jeff and the lead designer plus the developers at Wildlight Entertainment look stupid. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Highguard shutting down. And I do think Highguard is the biggest gaming failure of 2026 so far. Let's hope there is no Concord 3.0, but if there is, then what will it take for developers and lead designers and CEOs to be like, oh shit, we should stop releasing our games, and then consumers will call it Concord 3.0 or Concord 4.0 or just call it the next Concord. Like, nobody wants the game to be labeled as that, so game developers should just stop releasing their games and then it just gets compared to Concord. Not only did Highguard receive a lot of hate before its release, it also got a lot of hate when it released, and it got shut down under 2 months. So yeah, those are the reasons why I think Highguard is the biggest gaming failure of 2026 so far. Let me know what you guys think about Highguard getting shut down. Leave a like on the video if you have enjoyed, subscribe if you are new, and yeah, I do think it's crazy that Highguard shut down just under 2 months instead of it being shut down in half a year. Very unfortunate for Jeff Keighley and the team at Highguard Wildlight Entertainment because they were expecting this game to last at least 6 months or last forever. It unfortunately died under 2 months. Anyway, see you guys in the next one. Take care.